And welcome back to 101 East. Our guest today is the Australian cleric, Sheikh al-Hilali. What is your position on suicide bombing? There are many who say that to die as a martyr, as many suicide bombers think they are doing, is a quick road to heaven. Do Muslims who kill innocent people in the name of their religion qualify as martyrs?
I can tell you that Islam rejects and prohibits the killing of innocent people from any religion. Islam does not target civilians, it doesn't target innocent people. We are not allowed to kill women or children, not allowed to target public places such as schools, universities, trains, centers, cinemas, or trade centers. This is not allowed.
And yet in the past you have been quoted suggesting that the attacks of 9/11 were the work of God and justifiable.
This is not true. This is the falsification made by the media. Because I said before that everything happens by the will of God. Nothing happens in this world without God's permission. But God did not order these attacks. But we do not justify these things. I called 9/11 the mother of all disasters because it opened the door wide for all the problems in the Arab and Islamic world. And that door is still wide open.
You said already that civilians are unacceptable targets. Are military targets acceptable?
Any law, UN law, human law, divine law, allows any nation whose land is occupied to defend itself and its land. This is legitimate for everyone, but I don't support attacking civilians in any way.
Let's return to the situation in Australia. Do you think that your statements and the way they have been taken by the Australian media have made life for Muslims in Australia more difficult?
Those who know me well know that I handle things bravely, and I tend mostly to be joyful, and I tend to give examples to make myself clear.
Do you think Muslims in Australia are discriminated against?
I assure you with full frankness and clearly, Australia is the greatest nation on earth in terms of civilization and respecting people's dignity and freedom. The majority of Australian nation reject racism. I have supporters among Australian people more than among some clergymen in the Islamic community, because the Australian nation is an intelligent nation.
And yet the media seems to portray this image that the whole country is against you.
The media is trying. Some media men, there are some radio programs such as Talk Back, and these are vomiting poison and are warehouses for racism.
Why do you think that is?
The reason for Coronella riots, but the Australian nation, as people have sent me letters signed by them saying that they condemn these kind of deeds because Australia is for everyone. Australia is a ship for all of us, and if it sinks, we all die. I'm proud of the Australian nation, and I keep saying that the Australian nation is the most civilized nation and they respect human dignity.
Do you think that if we have a change of government, will Kevin Rudd be less antagonistic towards your position?
I'm not in any enmity with Mr. Howard. I respect him And I say that he's one of the most intelligent presidents who has ruled Australia. He's clever, he's very experienced, and we are not enemies. There is no enmity. It's a matter of different views. When someone like me declares, I love Australia more than Mr. X, Mr. Howard should think that it's a nice thing that I have a citizen who's competing with me in his love for Australia. It's a love competition. And this shouldn't make him feel inferior when a small citizen like me is competing with him in loving Australia. That's not a shameful thing. But the media do think that it's an offense to Mr. Howard, but it's not. I assure that I'll be walking in the moderate path, the path of peace, and with me there will be the third generation women. Thanks God, so far my women supporters until now I don't have a single woman who opposes me among women. But still I have problems with men.
You classify yourself as moderate, but there are many in Australia, even many Muslims, who think that you are a hardline Muslim, whose positions are not in keeping with modern Muslim ideas.
This is also not true, because if I was not a modern man, then there is no modern man in Australia, because being moderate is in my blood. And I was the first to establish the Muslim Women's League in Australia. I supported that league and I stood against the man who did not want that league. I still attend their gatherings and I participate in cooking, serving. I play volleyball as well, football, and I like sports. Everybody knows about my visits to churches, but there is this campaign as a result of misunderstanding in the last year. And I'm sure that this campaign, that even some religious men are taking part in, will fail. And Hilali will remain Australia's faithful son.
Your constant mention of women during this conversation has indicated that you're very aware that the gender debate in Australia seems to be one of the key criticisms against you. Are you surprised at the strength of the reaction that has greeted your comments about women?
Definitely. On the fourth day of Ramadan, and that was, I think, on the 25th of September. And it was only something I said, and that was a call. It was an advice to the Muslim women inside the mosque. And it was a lesson for 15 minutes. And I always use figurative speech, and I advised women always to wear the hijab, because exaggerating nudity and beautifying themselves and staying out late at night in parks arouses lust among young men. And as a result of that, we see crimes such as rape. So what am I doing? I'm trying to protect young men and girls.
Are you surprised at how your comments have been interpreted?
It was interpreted as follows. They've taken extracts from the whole context and they have put the bits together. I was quoting a line by the poet Rafi when I said that exaggeration and over-beautifying oneself when the women arouses man and she doesn't stick to the humane ethics, then it becomes a cheap bite. Just like, and I used this connotation which might have been out of place, and that was maybe a bit harsh, and I didn't mean to humiliate women. In my example, I said, if we take a piece of meat and put it in the backyard, away from the refrigerator, away from its natural place, accordingly it might be exposed to any attacks by the cats or the wolves. Accordingly, my example was taken as if I was making a simile between women and a piece of meat. And I was trying to come up with a close example, but it doesn't mean that every woman who exposes her body is cheap. But I'm just showing the reason when there is exaggeration, late at night, nudity, away from the house and amongst young men. What does that mean? Logically, the crime of rape will happen.
Would your life and the life of Muslims be easier in a country outside of Australia, in a country where Islam is the state religion, where everybody agrees with the same principles?
Let me tell you frankly, I find in Australia, my country, I find Islam is practiced in a way that is better than any other country that has to do with Islam, from south to west. And I find in Australia the practice of Islamic values, such as my freedom, which they are trying to stop now, freedom of speech, the right of education, medication, housing, coexistence, respect for others, choosing a government, not the 99% one, just like the fixed elections in the Arab world. What is happening, in fact, is that I truly elect my government.
Many people will watch this interview and they will say, it's Al Jazeera television. They will listen to the moderate position that you have been outlining, and they will say, this is not truly what you believe. This is what you're telling the people because you're concerned about your status in Australia. Is that fair?
I still assure you that my books that exceeded 40, most of them are against terrorism. Most of them, they are against radicalism. And the best book that I suggest that has to be translated into English is titled Islam, Jihad, and the Misinterpretation by Believers. What is the meaning of Islam? What is the meaning of Jihad? And I'm a member of international councils such as the International Council for Dawah and the World Assembly of Muslim Approximation. I'm a member of some Islamic councils and Islamic committees in different Islamic countries. I spent my life being moderate, loving, joyful. I like the sense of humor in dealing with others, and everybody knows this, but there are some people who think of me as a threat to the continuation of their ideology within the community. But I will remain faithful to my community and to Australian society for the rest of my life.
And there we will leave it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's all we have time for on this edition of 101 East from all of us here. Goodbye.